Okay, welcome everybody. Let's see, we have a little quiz, but first, somebody asked me, what's that noise? Okay, and somebody asked me about, I don't know, they just were curious about the forms. I'll just show you that form that I asked you to fill out, just so you can see the kind, in case you want to do something like this yourself. Apparently, one student wanted to do that. So this was the form, and if you click on responses, and it gives you this kind of summary, in case you ever want to use this Google Form stuff. So you can get, this is the percentage of students who want to work in business, graduate school, and so on. So it generates this kind of stuff from the responses. And somebody just asked me about it, so I thought I'd just tell you. Okay, and also speaking of that, I asked everyone to fill out this form, but I don't think everyone did. So this is part of your assignment. 14 people did, but not everybody. So you get graded on this. So the idea is that you're supposed to go to RStudio and just find out something interesting about RStudio. So let's look at some of the things people said. So some person said you can run the current line or section on source simply by using Control-Enter. So I don't know if I mentioned that. I don't think we have RStudio or R here, right? No. And apparently they won't do it for us now. So we're going to have to install that every time. So let's do that first. Let's get both R and RStudio installed on your computers before we start the quiz. So I would type in download R. Download R for Windows. And go to this one here. And it'll start downloading. And then while that's downloading, you can go download RStudio. That. Download RStudio. Remember, we don't want the server. So it's just the RStudio desktop. And then it's Windows. So this one here. So let's get both of them. And then you can install R. I don't know if I'm just going to click on it. I'm not going to do administrator. I'm not sure what administrator means on these computers anyway, since we don't really have administrator rights. And then after R installs, you can install RStudio. So unfortunately, we have to do this every class, so I guess you should just do that when you come in. The other thing you could do is like have a flash drive. So like I have a little flash drive somewhere on my keychain, and you can just put that in there. Okay, so going back to this, so let's see, let's see, the next thing someone said is what perform multiple calculation, what is perform multiple calculation using a vector, and how define a vector, then use it like we like. Well, that's not actually what I meant by this assignment. that's of course what you can do, but I'm asking for things that you can do in RStudio that you can't just do in R. So I'm just really talking about the RStudio, like features, like, you know, the things that are in the menus and things like that. But anyway, here's an example that they said. So here's X. Here's X. What is this, X? What does this give us? Gives us a vector, right? A sequence from 1 to 3. So here it is. And then you can, okay, but this is a good point anyway, even if it's not particularly relevant to RStudio. But what does X plus 12 do? So X is a vector, and what R does with X plus 12 is it adds 12 to each element of the vector. Okay? So we get 13, 14, 15. Here's another one. I'm not even sure what this means, but it sounds good. To copy lines above or below, you can use Alt-Shift and the up-down arrow, I guess, but I'm not sure what that means. But maybe we can try that. You can also install the R packages, I guess, in the lower right-hand. Okay, let's run. Let me install RStudio. Let's see what that means. Okay, that seems to take a little bit of time. So, okay, that was one thing. Here's this one. Actually, this is a feature. I'm going to publish all of these, by the way, for you. But I want to get at least one more week's worth of suggestions before I publish them all. But anyway, this one, source on save. Actually, I don't like that. What that does is when you save something, it runs all that code that you've written, which is kind of annoying to me. Like, I don't really want to, that's just when I save it, I don't want it to run. But that's what that does. Anyway, we're going to explain these, at least some of them. But here's another one, add-ins, browse add-ins, tools to add into, okay. I don't know exactly what that is. Undo. As most applications, also RStudio supports Control-C. Okay, that's all right. Jump to start. What's that? Jump to start. Shortcut Control up. Jump to start immediately without having to scroll. Well, we have to try that. I don't know what that one is. Patterns or templates. Recognizes local names. Sure what that means. Executing R code directly from the source editor. So yeah, that's good. I'll show you that in case. I think we did that, but we'll do that again. Okay, so some people did this, but you're all required to do it, and it counts for your. Now this is not. This is more just R code. I don't think this is part of a feature of RStudio. So this is not really what I meant. Drawing in 3D graphics, okay. I hope that they show us how to do that. If they give us that feature, I'd like to see how to do it. RStudio is a computer. Okay, that's not really the answer, the correct thing. Okay, so please do this now. Those of you who didn't do it this week, I'll give you another week. So that means you have to do 2 of them for next week, and you'll get credit for both of them. Otherwise, you won't get credit. Okay, so please go through and try and discover some interesting RStudio features. In fact, now let's run RStudio. And let's run RStudio and just play with it a little bit. Okay, here's our studio. Now, one thing I suggested that you do, you can set it up like you want, but one thing I suggested was that you go to, I think it was Tools and Global Options. And change the pane layout, at least that's the way I like to do it. I like to have the console at the top and the source at the bottom. And I'm going to make this bigger. And by the way, you can also change the editor theme, something like that. I'll try that. Ambience. I'll try that. Okay. Now, let me explain a little bit about this. This is where you run the code up here in the so-called console. Does everyone understand that? You run code up here. So if you want, you can type 2 + 3. And you get 5. Okay, down here is kind of for like writing your program and not wanting to run every single line of it every time. So you might want to write 2 + 3 here, and then you might want to run something like that. And you might want to write a bunch of lines of code there and not run it all at the moment. So that's what the source is for. So the source is the code that you write, and then when you run it, it gets run in the console. Now, one way to run it, there are a couple different ways to run it. One is you can select it, whatever you want to run, and then just click Run. And that will run it in the console. So let's say I do this. Let me add one more line of code there. So I have X there. So what is that X going to do at the bottom? What's this going to do? It's going to print X, right? So I can run all of this. One way to do it is to select it all and hit Run. Okay, and it runs 2 + 3 is 5, this, and X. Okay, another way to run it is to just, if you want to run everything that's in this so-called source window, you can just click Source here. And that runs everything. But all you see actually are the printouts. You won't see this part, X equals, let's try it. Let's see what happens. Ready? Source. Actually, okay, you don't even see the printout. So it all ran. What does that mean that it ran? It means it assigned this to X, basically. This also ran, but it doesn't show the printouts. So, or for example, suppose I add one more line of code. Suppose I do Y equals 2:9. Okay, and now let me click Source. Okay, so it ran. Now, that if it ran, that should mean that it knows what Y is, right? It knows what Y is. So if I type Y, hopefully it knows what Y is. So it did run. Okay? So if you want to run everything in the source window, you can do source here. And actually it seems like you can just click in a line. You don't have to select everything in the line. And if you click Run, it will run. Okay? But if you only click part of the line, that doesn't work. So if you select part of the line, then it's only going to run that part. So that's usually not what you want to do. So you either have to select the whole line or just click in the line and then run. Okay? Now apparently what one of our students said was that if you click this source on save here, and then you run save, it's going to actually run all of this code, which I don't know why somebody would want to do that, but you could. By the way, here's just what I didn't want to do. By the way, here is a search window, so you can search for code in your source there. And then how do you close this? Here. And what else? Okay. Now over here, look over here. What do you see over here under so-called global environment? What do you see? Global environment. You see the objects that we created. So far we've created X and Y, and so they show up here, and they give you some information about them. Okay, here, import a data set. You can import something from a CSV file, from an Excel file, and some other forms as well. This button here gets rid of all the objects in your environment. So if you're holding a lot of objects in the environment, that's going to slow down your computer. Okay, if you have a lot of data in the environment, because you have to know one thing about R, and that is everything in R is happening in the memory of the computer. That's not always true for most applications and most programming languages, but R stores everything in memory. So if you're working with a very large data set like a gigabyte, you're going to really be using a lot of memory from your computer. So you might want to clear objects. Now there are other ways to clear objects. This will clear everything, which probably you don't usually want to do that, but sometimes you do. Okay, and over here under history, we saw this before. This is all the code that you ran, and you can save this to keep a record of the code that you've run, if you like. Okay, and over here we have some other stuff which I'll let you explore a little bit more on your own. Okay, does anybody have any questions so far? Okay, so let me set up the test, and then you can take it. So please make sure you've logged into Manaba, because you're only going to have 5 minutes to do the test. What? I can't hear you, I'm sorry. Oh, you didn't start RStudio. You don't need RStudio for the quiz. You only have 5 minutes for the quiz. But you do need Manaba. Is there anybody who doesn't have Manaba open? Anybody who's not ready? And also, we did have a quiz this week, but I see that not everybody did it. So please make sure that you do the homework. It does count a lot. Everything counts towards your final grade. So please make sure that you keep up. Okay, I'm going to start the homework. I'm going to start the quiz. As I said, you just have 5 minutes. Okay, go ahead. You should see it there. It's called Factors and Data Frames Quiz. before you answer question 4, read question 5 because it says it gives you a note about about question 4 in case I don't want you to be confused about that question 4. So there's a little note in question 5 about the same situation. RStudio. Okay, now R has some built-in data sets. So if you, so one data set that we're going to be using later is called House Votes 84. So this is maybe from 1984. And that is in a package, I believe, called MLBench here, MLBench. So how can we access this data? Anybody know how to do it? If it's in a package called MLBench, what's our first step in accessing the data? Anybody tell me? Install the package. So let's try and install MLBench. Do you see how it's spelled? MLBench into R. Let's see if we can do that. Tools, install package. Okay, MLBench, okay, it's there. Okay, and then you just click install. It doesn't take too long to install it. Okay, now there's a database in MLBench, and it's called, I just told you what it's called, but it's called House Votes 84. So the way to load that data is to, you have to put this command here. So you need data. Oh, sorry, before that. Okay, so let me explain the difference between installing a package and this so-called library function. The so-called library function. Anybody, can anybody tell me the difference between installing a package and the library function? Anybody know that? Okay, when you install it, basically you download it into the computer. But like I said, R, everything happens that you do in R is happening in the memory of the computer. So it's downloaded, but it's not in memory at the moment. So you want to bring that library into the memory. And this is the command that you have to type to do that. Otherwise, it's just installed on the computer, but it's not in our R session yet. Okay, so type that in, library MLBench. And let's see, are there any shortcuts? Let's see. Let's try. And if you want to type it in down here, you can do it down here as well. Instead of typing it up there, you can type it here. Now, how about if I type LIB? Okay, so it gives you some hints, and you can choose the one that you want, library. And then you can type, you can try out ML and see, does it give me any hints? No. D. Okay, so that gives me that hint. and I can click on that. Okay, so if I run this command, it will load MLBench into memory. So how do I run this command? Okay, so, oh, by the way, somebody in the Cool Art Studio homework assignment, somebody gave us an alternative way to run this command. What is it? So one way, as we said, is just to click Run. Another way is to select the whole thing and click Run. What's another way that they mentioned in the Cool Art Studio? They said if you hit, I think it was Shift and, no, what is it? I think it's Control Shift Enter. Or is it just, I forget what it is right now. Let's see, do we have that? What was their suggestion? Here, no. Here. No. Where was that? My computer has frozen. Control Enter. Sorry, it's just Control Enter. Let's try that. So I'll just, I think you have to, maybe you don't have to select the whole thing. Let me just try Control Enter. Yeah. Okay, so you can do that. Control Enter, and that will run that. Okay, now what have we just done? We've brought MLBench into the memory. Now we can access it. Now so MLBench, if you want to know what MLBench is, let's see, let's try this. Tell us. Let's look up MLBench. What is MLBench? Here's MLBench. So a collection of artificial and real-world machine learning benchmark programs, including several data sets from the UCI repository. So what does benchmark mean? It means like if you want to test a new procedure, you want to test it compared to some sort of typical scenario. So that's called a benchmark. So this typical scenario is the benchmark, and then you want to test a new procedure compared to the benchmark. Okay? So I'm not quite sure what this has in it, but it does have this data set that we want. By the way, let's look at this. Did we look at this before, UCI repository? Did we check that yet? No. Okay, let's just look for that. That has many, many data sets. So here's the UCI Machine Learning Repository. We click here on Data Sets. I don't know how many. Okay, so they have 362 different data sets there. Okay, so if you need a data set to test your algorithm with, one way to do it is to take one of these data sets and work with it. Okay, and they describe what the data set, the data types, and so on, a lot of different features of the data set. So there are many different data sets here, and apparently one of them is the one that we want, which is also in MLBench. So I want to access that, and the way to access a data set once you have that package installed is to run this command. So you run the command data and the name of the data set. So one of the data sets is called House Votes 84. So if you run this, then you will have access to that database data set. Okay, so how do you run it? Again, Control Enter will work. Okay. Everybody get that far? Okay, let's try to see what this looks like. Okay, now one thing you could do is just type in House Votes 84, but let's try a different command. There's a command called View with a capital V that will allow you to sort of see it in a nice clean view. So let's try that. Let's type in capital V-I-E-W. Yes? Thank you. Go to Environment and click what? Oh, good. Good. Okay, let's check that. Okay, that's actually, did you see what we did? So he said, why don't we go to the environment, and now we have the data set there, and just click on that. That was great. Now, actually that ran our command. What command did it run? Here, I didn't type this. I didn't get a chance because he stopped me before I typed it. So it entered view. Okay, so you could have just typed this and gotten the same result. Okay, everyone see? Okay, so down here we have a view of the data set. Okay, so what I can see is that there are a number of rows in this data set. I can see there's row number 1, row number 2, and all the way down to, actually, I'm not going to scroll down, but how many rows are there? If you look over here, how many rows are there? 435 observations. That means 435 rows. And what this is these are senators, or no, I should say, they're members of the Congress, of the U.S. Congress. Okay? And the first column is labeled what? The first column is labeled what? Class. Okay? That's an important word in data science. Okay? A very important word. I'll explain it in a second. The second column is labeled what? B1, B2, B3. It goes up to, I guess, B16. Okay? So V1, and okay, what are the values in the class column? What are the values? What's the value in the first row? Republican. Second row? Republican. Third row? Democrat. Those are the two parties, right, in the U.S. So the first column, called class, is we could say, party affiliation of the congressman. It means what party they belong to. Okay, so the first first congressman is a Republican. The second one is a Republican. The third one is a Democrat. Okay. V1 through V16 are different issues that they voted on. So did they vote yes on this issue or no? So the first congressman, who was a Republican, did he vote yes or no for the first issue? He voted no. How about for the second issue? He voted yes. How about for the third issue? No, and so on, right? Does everyone understand this data set? So it's a record of how they voted on 16 different issues and also their party affiliation. Okay? Now, the class, so these are 17 different variables about each senator or each congressman. And the first one, as I said, is called class. And the class variable is usually the variable that you're trying to predict. So what we might try to do here is, based on people's voting records, ask whether we can predict whether they are Democrat or Republican. But based on their voting patterns, can we predict whether they are Democrat or Republican? Okay, that would be a machine learning task that we would try to perform. And we're going to eventually learn an algorithm called naive Bayes, which will make an attempt at doing this. And then we'll see how good that attempt is. Okay, we're also going to learn a different algorithm called neural network, which is going to make an attempt to do the same thing. And we'll see, for example, how well that works. Okay, generally speaking, the variable labeled class is usually the one that you want to predict. Okay, but that's a little bit arbitrary, because maybe you would prefer to predict how they voted on column 16, or the next issue. You want to predict how they're going to vote on the next issue based on all of these other columns, right? So it's a little bit arbitrary what you're trying to predict, but they labeled the first one class. Okay, so maybe that's what we would try to predict. Okay? But it doesn't, you may be interested in predicting something entirely different. Okay? Okay, so that's our data set. Okay. Now, have we studied data frames yet? Yeah, we did, because we just had it on the quiz, right? I just asked you about data frames on the quiz. So in R, there are various so-called data types or data structures. So what have we studied, or what are some of the ones that we have studied? The data types or data structures. First one might be a vector. We studied vectors. What else did we study? Matrices. We studied matrices. Did we study lists yet? No? Oh, that was a mistake. Okay, we need to study lists. But anyway, they're not as important as the last type, which is what? Data frame. Okay, data frame is the most important data structure that we have. Okay? Now, can anybody tell me anything about what a data frame is? Data frames have columns and rows. Basically, they are like a spreadsheet. Okay? Well, this obviously looks very much like a spreadsheet, right? Right, this data looks very much like a spreadsheet. And in fact, it is a data frame. Now, in order to do a lot of manipulations that we want to do, our manipulations depend on what kind of thing we're working with. Are we working with a vector, or are we working with a matrix, or are we working with a data frame? So we'd like to make sure that this is actually a data frame. So let's try this. Okay, do you see what I typed? Is.da, and it comes up with some suggestions, and the one that I want is what? Is it a data frame? And then what do I want to put inside the brackets? I want to put this, so I'll copy it. Put it inside. Okay, and I hope, well, anyway, I'll hit enter, and what do I get back? Now there are a lot of functions like this, is data frame, is vector, is matrix, and so on. So anyway, I wanted to know if this is a data frame because there are a lot of things that I want to do, and it has to be a data frame in order for me to do it. Okay, so this is a data frame, so I can do certain kinds of things. For example, you know from the quiz, and hopefully from what you studied, one thing that I can do with this. What can I do with this? Since it's a data frame, what was, I think, the last question in the quiz? What could I do with this? I could do this. I could create a variable called class column. Of course, you could call it anything. You just call it X if you want. Equals. Now, the R style is not to use equal, but to use this, that. That's the R style. And there's a shortcut, which I can't remember right now, where you can just, you don't have to type two symbols, you just type one and it produces that. So maybe somebody can look that up, because that's a shortcut in RStudio. But anyway, either way, you can type, in most cases equals is fine, but not every case, but almost every case. Okay, anyway, I'm creating a variable, and anybody know? Okay, so anybody have an idea what I want to do here? I want to pick up the first column. How do I do it? I hope somebody got it right on the quiz. How do I pick up the first column? So I'll give you a hint. I want that, and then what? What? $, and what? And the column that I want. So which column do I want? The class column, like that. Okay, the $, like this, following the name of the data frame. Name of the data frame is houseboats 84. The $, following that, and then the column name will extract that column. So let's run that. Now you could type out class column to see what it looks like, but it's going to be pretty long. How long is it going to be? How long is it going to be? If I type out class column, and if I run this, what am I going to see? I'm going to see how many? How many observations are there? 435. So you're going to see 435 Republicans and Democrats. Well, okay, let's do it. Okay? So does everyone see what we did? How did I extract this column? What's the syntax for that? The name of the data frame, $, the column that you want. All right, everyone get that? Now, if you don't want to have to look at all 435 of them, if you just want to see the first few, you can, oh, by the way, okay, before I say that, all right, yeah, anyway, let's do that. If you don't want to look at all of them, you can use the function called head, H-E-A-D, and that will just give you the first few items. so you don't have to look at all of them. So let's try that. Head, open bracket, close bracket, and again, houseboats, 84. If I just run that instead, oops, that did, no, that was wrong, sorry, that was totally wrong. I didn't mean to type that. I meant to type $. Oh, no, sorry. What do I want inside here? Class column. That's the name of the variable I created. If I run that, I just get 6 of them. It just gives you the first 6. Okay, so if you don't want to print out all of them, you can do that. Okay, now, let's go over to the right-hand side in the environment window, which is here. And I see the variable that I created. And what does it tell me about that variable? It says that it's a what? It says that it's a factor. Okay, now you hopefully finished the tutorial, and you know what factor means. Okay, so it's a factor. So factor is kind of basically just a vector, but it's kind of got a little bit of embellishment on it. Okay? But basically it's a vector, but it gets treated differently in R sometimes, many times, than does just this regular vector. Okay, so it's a factor, and what does the level mean about a factor? What does the level mean about a factor? The level is the different set of values that a factor can be. So, how many levels are there for class column? Well, here are the levels. What are they? Just those 2. That means the different possible values that this column has are what? Just 2, Democrat and Republican. So there are 2 levels only for this column. Okay, now I'd like you to repeat all of this for column number 16. Do the same thing that we did for the class column for column 16. So give it a new name, extract it, and print it out and see what kind of object it is. We just found that class column was a factor. So do the same thing for column 16.